hate seeing myself teach. I hate that faces do that.
I honestly haven't
Okay. I'll just see how far I can stretch this.
Yeah.
With one student. Okay, so today we are going to talk about being polite and what it means to be polite and how that can look different depending on your situation. So, do we know what politeness is just by itself? Yeah, can you try to give me an example or a definition?
Nice, be nice.
Being nice, yeah, absolutely. Being cordial. Behaving in a way that doesn't ever offend anyone or make anyone uncomfortable. So today's targets, you're going to be able to understand the formality of speech expected in certain situations. So you're going to be able to know, should I be speaking properly or can I be speaking casually? And then you also are going to be able to assess your situation and relationship to who you're speaking with and know how to know what language is appropriate. And then you're also going to know how to make a request. This is going to be the situation that we're focusing on, is creating a request, formally and not so formally, okay? And then also you're going to know which vocabulary is appropriate, depending on if we're doing a formal or informal request. Okay. And this is important for you to know because politeness is going to look different depending on who you're talking to and what you're talking about. So being able to figure out your speaking situation and who you're talking to, and being able to use the correct language for that situation is going to decide whether that conversation is successful or not, or if you're coming off as impolite. So to start us off, I want you to get with a partner that doesn't exist, and ask them, what does it mean to be polite? How do you show politeness using your language? And think about, does this look different for every situation? And does it look the same for every person you speak to? Okay? And it would help that everyone would talk about that for like at least 5 minutes, because that's a lot of questions. And then let's come back as a class, fast forward. So what do we think? What does it mean to be polite?
Saying nice things.
Yeah, being nice. Oh, there's nothing to this marker. There's this one either. Being nice. Not offending anyone. Being not offensive. Good. And then, how do we show in our language that we are trying to be polite?
Words, thank you.
Thank you are P's and T's, right? Please and thank you are kind of the staples of politeness. Good. And thankful. Thank you. Does this look the same for every situation?
No.
No. Okay. We'll look at that. And does this look the same for every person you speak to? No. Okay.
Changes.
Good. Yeah, we're going to be looking at how to figure out what makes it different and what language we need to use in those different situations. So there are 3 main factors that affect there are 3 main factors that affect what being polite looks like and affect what what language we want to be using to come off as polite. And the biggest one is our society. This big circle. Society is going to decide what language we use and how we behave in order to look polite and come off as polite. And then inside of that big society bubble, we have our current situation. And today we're going to be focusing on the situation of making a request. So, making a request, are we going to have to be a little bit more polite or a little more casual, do you think, than usual?
Maybe more.
More polite. Yeah, we're asking something of someone else. So we're kind of putting a burden on someone else in some way. So in that way, to come off as polite, we're going to be needing to be a little bit more formal. And then finally, the last thing that's going to be affecting the language we use to come off as polite is the relationship we have with who we're talking to. So depending on if you're talking to a boss versus talking to your close friend, we're going to be using some different kind of language. Because you wouldn't want to talk to a close friend the way you would a boss. They would think that you're upset with them, right? You want to be a little bit more emotional with a friend. So all of this is going to give you your script, the language you want to use to come off as polite, to seem polite. Does this make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we're going to be focusing on, we're always in the same society, we're here in the United States, and the situation of making a request. And then what we're going to be changing around today is this relationship, and looking how just this one little part can make your language change so much. Okay, so let's brainstorm some different relationships that we can look at today. To start off, the one that we're going to look in a video here in just a second is talking to your mom. Can you think of someone else that you would make a request to?
A friend.
A friend. Maybe a boss.
Mm-hmm. Brother, sister.
Sibling. Good. Alright, yeah. For how little our class is today, these four will probably be sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, so let's look at this video here. And you're going to watch me make an embarrassing request to my mother. Okay, I needed some help with rent this month. So I had a video call with my mom, and we're going to look at the language that I use making this difficult request. And we're also just going to look at the language we use together in general, okay? And to see, let's look at if it's informal or formal. That didn't work.
Sure. So I was thinking,
What was I doing there?
Introducing the topic.
Yeah, I was trying to casually start introducing the idea of my mom giving me some money. Good. Was that language so I was thinking, was that casual or was that formal?
Casual.
It was pretty casual. I don't think I would start a conversation like that with a boss.
I haven't been able to work a lot lately because of school and because of teaching. I don't get paid to teach. And I need a little help with rent.
Why did I explain that I'm not getting paid for my teaching job? What was the purpose of that?
So she understands.
Yeah. So when you're making a request, sometimes if the request is more difficult, the situation if sometimes the situation is difficult, not a happy situation, you may need some explanation. Some background information. If it's an easier conversation, you can just happily talk, right? You don't really need to explain yourself. It's one factor that's going to affect the language use.
So I was wondering if you could maybe give me some money for rent.
I was wondering if you could maybe give me some money for rent. Was I being very formal with my mother in this request?
No.
No, not really. Usually the word could versus can would be more formal, but then I follow it by maybe. So I was trying to be polite in a way where I give her respect by saying could, but also be more informal with the word choice of maybe.
On Monday I can. On Monday you can? How much do you think you could give me for rent?
How much do you think you could give me for rent? If the speaker was requesting money from someone other than a close family member, how could I say this differently?
Would you please?
Yeah. Could you, maybe I would give them an actual amount, right? Instead of just asking how much I could get. So, could you please give me X amount?
I look like a whale. I hate looking at this. There, that's better. That's not better. It makes your forehead look giant. There, that's better. Dennis and I are starting diets. I know you said that. I told you about that, yeah. Keto, right? Or no, yeah. Keto. Yeah, it's kind of hard. I bet. Anyway, how much do you need?
So sometimes, especially when we're talking to someone informally, the conversation can kind of stray from its initial purpose. Like that happened just there, and my mom thinking she looks like a giant. So how did the listener, my mother, get back onto the topic of paying rent?
She said, so.
So how much do you need, right? So she asked another prompting question. If this were a boss, do you think this situation would have happened? Or would that have been very impolite to stray off on a topic like that in the middle of a request?
Maybe.
It might be impolite.
I haven't figured that out yet. It depends on. I'm trying to find someone to take over my lease for the rest from like when I leave here to when I come back. So hopefully someone can take over my rent for that month. but I need help for at least 3 weeks in August. But I don't know how much that'll be yet.
Okay, well, let me know.
Did the listener ever expressly say that she would help with paying rent? Or how do we know that she agreed to help? Did she ever say, yes, I will give you money?
No.
No. So she's being more informal about it. We never needed that explicit yes, like we would with maybe going to the bank and asking for a loan, right? We would never need that confirmation with the mother. And all she did was ask more prompting questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
She wants to know why and how much.
Mm-hmm.
And then she says, okay. Right?
Mm-hmm.
A little less informal.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. That's
Alright, how did the relationship between the speaker and the listener affect the language used in the request for money? So, there was a lot of different things happening, right? So the relationship was close. This was my mom. I've known her before I was even born, right? Very close relationship. But the situation was kind of difficult. Oops. It was not easy for me to ask my mom for help. It was kind of embarrassing. And so we had a weird mixture of what would normally make this formal language and this informal language, right? And we saw that with using could with maybe. And also, can you think of another example of where I did something a little bit more formal in the beginning of the video? What did I do?
So I was thinking.
Yeah, so I was thinking, I introduced the request, and I explained the need. So I had this weird mixture of formal and informal language. I created this script to come off to my mom as polite. I was being respectful, but also not treating her the same way I would as a bank teller, because that would have also hurt her feelings. Because she is more to me than just a bank teller. Alright. So, being polite can be kind of tricky. The situation has its factors, the relationship has its factors, and this all creates our script like you see over here. So difficult or large requests, you're going to need to introduce the request and explain the need. You cannot just ask for something giant. You cannot ask for $600 without explaining why. And you're going to want to use formal language. And then for a small request, you can just kind of ask. And be like, hey, can I borrow that pencil? You know, you wouldn't need to explain. Hi, I don't have money to buy pencils and I left mine at home. Could I borrow your pencil? That would seem a little bit overkill, giving up too much personal information. And then your relationship is also going to affect it. So, talking to someone who has authority over you, you're going to be using could or the word possibly. Could I possibly? And then talking to someone as your equal or you have authority over, you can use can or maybe. These are going to be less formal words, can or maybe. And then you can see how this exactly had a mixture in my relationship with my mom in a situation being difficult, where I had a formal word, could, and an informal word, maybe. So these are not just cut and slice pieces. You have to sometimes mix them depending on a difficult request with an informal relationship. back to our lecture that we listened to, I will have you all fill out these worksheets, and you're all playing a role. You're either a close friend, a coworker, a boss, a teacher, or a child. And you need to all have these filled out by the end of the class. They all have different information checked off, and you need to ask each other for the information that you don't have. And you need to make these requests based on your relationship. If you're a child asking a teacher, what language would you be using? You'd be using formal language. And since you're just asking for information, these situations are going to be the same. We're only manipulating the relationship part. So it's always going to be a small request, right? So you all have to go around and fill in the charts and asking your partners and your classmates, depending on your relationship, decide which language you're going to be using to come off as polite. Okay? And then we would do that, and we would close, and we would fill out all the boxes, and then I would have them give me their speech acts, and I write them on the board and decide whether they're formal or polite and why they use those. And that would be the end of the class.
Nice.
That was 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. Not bad.